Hello, everyone. So today I will be talking about my topic, which is on contraception, and I will be providing sort of like a Q&A section on my topic. So I will be starting by sharing my screen to you guys so you can see what I'm doing here. So as I mentioned, I had a Q&A section prepared on contraception. So let's go to the first question. And the first question says, if the church forbids contraception, does it expect married women to have 15 kids? So to answer this question, the church really isn't opposed to contraception. It is not opposed to the responsible regulation of births. Couples may use natural family planning, otherwise known as NFP, to do this if they have a just reason to do so. NFP is a method of spacing births that can be more effective than contraception. Since a woman can only conceive only 3 to 5 days each month, a couple who is practicing NFP will refrain from these marital relations when the woman has a chance of conceiving a child. With an effectiveness rate of 99%, NFP could be considered far more reliable than contraception. NFP is also an effective means of achieving pregnancy, since the couple has a deep understanding of the woman's fertility. Many people may think that the church's opposition to contraception is an attack of the freedom of women to have control of their own bodies, but this is not so, as the church insists that women have their own control over their own bodies. So by having control over one's body, a person is able to make a gift of themselves to another person. And also the contraception industry would like its customers to believe that contraception grants them control over their bodies, relationships, and sex lives. But while contraception offers a person the ability to live without responsibility, this isn't really considered freedom. Freedom can only be attained through some form of self-control. So some people who use birth control to make up for the lack. So some persons will use birth control to make up for their lack of self-control. So thus they will not really experience a genuine freedom. Contraception wouldn't really make a woman free. To treat pregnancy as if it were a disease implies that there is something defective in the way she was created. And it also says that her fertility is a curse, while it is not so. And NFP is an alternative because it does not treat a woman's body as if it needs to be subdued by drugs or shielded in order to function properly. It invites the man to treat the woman's fertility with reverence instead of disdain. And this could be considered a true sexual liberation. And now we move on to the next question that I have. And this question says, if couples are using NFP to space births, what is the difference between that and contraception? So this is a really common question I think that persons may have, and some form of clarification is needed. on this specific question. So there will be four big differences between natural family planning and contraception. So the first difference is the morality of the act. The second deals with the fact that some contraceptives work by causing abortions. And the third issue pertains to advertised side effects that are caused by contraceptives. The last difference is the fruits of natural family planning. So imagine that a married couple is using contraceptives for the same reason another couple is practicing NFP, but both couples already have children and they hope to have more. So, but for good reasons, they need to space the birth of their children. And both have the intent to regulate births. So, however, the good intent of a couple is not sufficient to determine the morality of their act. So, by a way of comparison, we can say that if two women wanted to avoid becoming overweight, one might go on a diet while another one might binge and purge. So both may stay slim, but one will resort to gluttony and unnatural, unhealthy behavior. And while the other person will be exercising the virtue of temperance. So it can be seen also that the church's condemnation of contraception does not imply that the couple has bad intentions, but that they are using a means which is considered immoral. Married couples are free to have intercourse on any given day, regardless of the wife's fertility. But when they do join as one flesh, then they must not frustrate the purpose God has designed that specific act to have. So it is God that designed that and made its purpose. So to contracept it is to say that God's presence is not desired, and then this couple will be abstaining from sex for a just reason, and this same couple cannot be compared to a couple who sterilizes their acts of lovemaking in order to enjoy the pleasure of the marital act just to get some form of bodily pleasure out of it. So the reason the church denounces contraception is not because it is considered artificial, but as we can see that the church allows the use of countless artificial drugs and other technological advances that medicine can offer man. However, these are to be used only to heal dysfunction and promote the proper functioning of the body. And the use of contraception does the total opposite of this. It prevents the natural functioning of the body. So therefore, the moral difference between natural family planning and contraception is that contraception deliberately interrupts, sterilizes, and works against the marital act and the beginning of life, while natural family planning respects the way God ordained this to work. So it can be said that natural family planning doesn't interrupt or sterilize the act of intercourse in any way. And also, natural family couples are not really acting against the way God has designed fertility, but they are working with it. Another major difference between natural family planning and contraceptives is that some birth control methods work by causing abortions. So, for example, the intrauterine device, which can be called the IUD, or the Norplant, the Depo-Provera, and other low-dose birth control pills often work by preventing a newly conceived child from attaching to the uterus. And then this will cause a first trimester abortion to occur. And sometimes the mother may not even know of, of this abortion that occurred. All contraceptives have potential side effects, most of all which tend to affect the woman's body. And these side effects can include a heightened risk of breast cancer, a great risk of contracting a sexually transmitted device, a sexually transmitted disease, sorry. Another side effect could be headaches, high blood pressure, increased fetal abnormalities, and there could also be some form of toxic shock syndrome. Finally, consider the implications of the fact that couples who use NFP have a divorce rate of 1 to 3%, so which is really low, I think, because it's only from 1 to 3%. In one study, there were 0 divorces out of 1,400 persons who practice NFP. So keep in mind that more than half of all marriages have ended in divorce. The relation between natural family planning and strong marriages is an important indication of the close relationship between natural family planning and the way God designed marriage and sex to work together. Also, NFP offers something else that contraceptives really cannot offer. For example, an understanding of how to time intercourse to achieve pregnancy. Furthermore, NFP couples are in a much better position to teach their teens about sexual self-control. When we consider the positive impact of NFP on marriage and the potential dangers of contraception, the most loving option becomes obvious, which will be the natural family planning. So despite of all these differences, natural family planning can be abused. So because it is so effective in regulating births, persons, for example, a couple could take on a contraceptive mentality on the use of natural family planning, and then they will close themselves from the gift of fertility, and so this can happen. NFP must be practiced responsibly and only when there is a just reason to do so. So now I will go to the next question. So this question says, why do NFP couples have such low divorce rates? So this is a really interesting question, I think. So as to answer this question, the low divorce rates among couples practicing natural family planning is based on a bunch of different factors. So firstly, couples with strong relationships are more likely than other couples to choose to practice NFP. And secondly, NFP actually helps strengthen marital relationships, and NFP also depends on some of the same virtues as marriage itself, such as commitment, communication, consideration, and even self-control. Self-control. Couples who tend to reject NFP as they may reject NFP because they may consider it too much trouble or too restrictive. And these same couples will turn out to be the same couples who ultimately find the demands of marriage itself too much to handle. So it can be difficult to count all the ways that NFP tends to strengthen a marriage. So one of these can be that since the spouses are not constantly sexually available to other, this keeps them from so since the spouses are not really sexually available to their partner frequently, this would keep them from taking their partner for granted. So often women have complained that the use of contraception has lowered their sense of worth. So in the use of NFP, they wouldn't be taking the other person for granted in the relationship. So also, in our research, a woman stated that while she and her first husband were using contraception, she felt like a toy or a recreational vehicle. The contraception made her husband assume that she was always sexually available, and she felt used and taken for granted as a result. So she has since been married in the church and has used NFP for years. So after this, she considered NFP to be the best alternative. NFP is way better, it can be said, and couples who make the switch are more than pleased with the results. One way to measure a couple's satisfaction with the method of spacing births is to look at how many times they continue to use it over a period of time. So for example, spermicides have a 43% continuation rate. The diaphragm has a 58% continuation rate. And the condom has a 63% continuation rate, and the pill has a 72% continuation. So the NFP, the natural family planning, it has the most highest continuation rate, so it is 93%. So it can be seen that many couples continue to use NFP in their relationships. So the church explains that the practice of NFP favors attention from one's partner, helps both parties to drive out selfishness, the enemy of true love, and it also depends their sense of responsibility in the process. And we will move on to the other question. And this question says, if the couples do not use contraception, won't the world become overpopulated? I think many persons have wondered about this question. If there's no contraception, then wouldn't the world become overpopulated? So as to answer this question, contraceptions are not needed to plan a particular family size because there was a research done and NFP was proven to be a practical alternative that works effectively. In 1993, there was a study done, and in this study, there were 19,843 women in India who practiced NFP to delay their pregnancy, and they had a pregnancy rate close to zero. So we can see that natural family planning can be used as the way to space their births. So with natural family planning, it is an alternative to contraception, and the world wouldn't really become overpopulated. So some people would say if there is an overpopulation problem, but global fertility and birth rates have been rapidly decreasing for more than 25 years. In fact, almost every developed country in the world has a below replacement fertility rate, which is interesting, I think. And it can be considered that the problem isn't really overpopulation, and the problem also wouldn't be a lack of space, but it will be an unjust distribution of resources. And human poverty is also can be considered like as a result of bad economic policy, and it isn't a result of overpopulation as some persons may think. And so we answered this question, and I will move to the next question. And this question says, what if another pregnancy could put the wife's life at risk? Does the church say that a couple cannot use contraception even for her sake? So for this question, I found the answer, and the answer is, so if there is a serious danger that another pregnancy can harm the woman's life, so if another pregnancy could somehow put the woman's life in danger, then the couple should avoid pregnancy by means of natural family planning, which is considered the most effective method of family planning. The couple's goal of not endangering the wife's life is considered good because the husband wouldn't want his wife to be in danger. So that is a good intention, but that is not really what is in question. So the problem mean is that the couple uses um so the problem will be the means that the couple uses to protect the woman's health. So NFP will do that more effectively than most contraceptive methods. And there won't really be any side effects that other contraceptive methods could bring along. So NFP could be considered a more better and safer alternative. Um, this was a really short answer. So move on to the next question. And this question says, what does the church teaches about in vitro fertilization, artificial insemination, fertility drugs, and stuff like that? So to answer this question, I'll say that medical technology exists to promote the proper functioning of our bodies. Men as well as women can be infertile, but some of the reproductive methods you're asking about focus on women. So since infertility can be a dysfunction of a woman's reproductive system, the use of fertility drugs, which would go against this condition, they will promote the healthy functioning of the reproductive system, is morally acceptable, but they must be used responsibly. If they are not, a woman's ovaries may release too many eggs, and this can be dangerous to the mother and the children. While reproductive technology may assist the sexual act, it must not really replace it per se. So this is partly why the church does not permit the use of in vitro fertilization and artificial insemination, because these procedures do not really help the marital act, but they will substitute for it, bringing about conception through a means that other than intercourse. So in other words, a contraception tries to make love without making babies, and IVF and artificial insemination attempt to make babies without really making love. Neither act is really considered moral because love and life are inseparable and they are meant to go together. However, there is another even more serious problem with both in vitro fertilization and artificial insemination. Not only does this process seek to create life in a morally unacceptable way, they also create many excess lives, it could be said, that will inevitably be destroyed in the earliest stages. So in vitro fertilization, this is a process that involves conceiving life in a laboratory and transferring that into a woman's womb. It is not really an easy process. So extra embryos are often frozen and kept for a later attempts, or sometimes they will be donated or experimented on. So since many eggs will be fertilized during the procedure, a good number of them are will be destroyed. So the effort will be a failure and none of the eggs will implant. So this would be considered an immoral way to create and destroy so many lives, it could be said, in an attempt to create only one life. And artificial insemination is a different process from in vitro fertilization. And in artificial insemination, this involves taking the sperm from a man and injecting it into the uterus or placing it in the woman's cervix. This too is also another difficult method, and it is really not uncommon that the process needs to be repeated 6 or more times even in order for it to be successful. So right now, we said that not many countries, not many countries require STD testing for sperm donors. So HIV and other viruses can be spread during the process. A recent study found that 32% of donated sperm contains an STD. So if someone happens to donate their sperm and if they do not test that, then there could be the probability that it has an STD. So even without these problems, both of these methods are incompatible with the dignity of a child and the life-giving nature of the marital act. Each child should be brought about into being by an act of love between both parents and not by a technical research experimenting with cells, as it can be seen in vitro fertilization, or a doctor injecting sperm into a uterus, as in artificial insemination. So when the sperm are taken from a man other than the husband, it also infringes upon the child's right to be born of a father and mother known to him, and it betrays the spouse's marital pledge to become a father and a mother only through each other and not by someone else. So because of contraception and reproductive technologies, we have separated what God originally joined together, which is sex and babies. So you may ask, if these acts are considered immoral, then why does God let conception occur? So God has entrusted us with the gift of sexuality, and He will not prevent us from abusing that freedom. So, for example, if a child is conceived out of wedlock, let's say, the act is immoral, yes, but God would still allow life to come out of this. So just because conception occurs, that does not mean that the methods to achieve this were good, as it can be said. There are many ways to bring life into this world, including murder, love, adultery, rape, incest, IVF, or in vitro fertilization, and artificial insemination, but only one, which is marital love, is consistent with the dignity of the human person and testifies to the truth of God's gift of sexuality. Many persons believe that in vitro fertilization and artificial insemination are the only options available to an infertile couple hoping to have a child of their own. But this is not so because there are many doctors who specialize in this certain area. So they will specialize in determining the cause of infertility, and they would work towards healing this condition with technology that they may possess. So this was the question. And this other question that I have says, won't a condom protect you from getting an STD? So I think this is a pretty common question that persons may have on contraception. So I'll go ahead and answer this question. So condoms were not really created for the purpose of preventing STDs, but they were created for preventing pregnancies and not STDs. So while the condom may reduce the likelihood of contracting HIV, yearly cases of this virus are much less than 1% of all the yearly STD cases. So gonorrhea is an STD and it is a much more common problem, but there was not sufficient evidence to conclude that the condom protected women from this STD. So this is not good news, especially for women, as they tend to suffer consequences from being infected by this virus, and this can lead to ectopic pregnancy, pelvic inflammatory disease, and it can also lead to infertility. So there was a research done, and in this research, it was found that condoms reduce the risk of in this research it stated that in spite of all the talk today about condoms and safe sex, they couldn't really prove that condoms offered any protections to women against the 7 of the 8 STDs which were found. A study mentioned that there is no evidence that condoms really reduce the risk of an STD infection. So in this research also there was some data in which a couple of parents, they took their child to the doctor, and they took the child to the doctor because she had a sore throat. And then the doctor continued to examine her and told the parents that the child had genital warts growing in her throat. So genital warts can be caused by an STD and usually affects the genital areas of infected men and women. However, a pregnant woman can transmit them to her unborn baby, and in those cases, the virus can cause warts in the infant's throat. So this mother had contracted an STD and passed it on to her baby, which was in the womb at that time. So furthermore, the failure rate of the condom is in preventing pregnancy is about 14 to 16% during the first year of use. Considering that a woman only has 3 to 5 days to get pregnant out of the month, and STDs can literally be transmitted every day of the month, no matter the time. And it can be said that the condom is by no means an adequate protection against sexually transmitted diseases. No matter what STD we are talking about, the condom doesn't really guarantee protection, even when it is used correctly and consistently. On the other hand, chastity if practice, then this would guarantee protection at all times. And I will go on by saying that sex is meant to be a total gift of itself, and you will hold nothing back in this process. Any concerns about safety should not enter into the equation. You should protect yourselves from enemies or any kind of danger, and you should give yourselves to your beloved. So this was all the questions I had for today's session. And yeah, this was the end of this Q&A session that I had for contraception. Yeah, so this is the end of this video that I had on contraception. And thank you for listening to this video.